And she sent me a text on a Saturday morning because she said, I'm sorry, I just had to share this with somebody because I can't believe what's going on. And I said, sure, what's going on? She was like, my fasting glucose was in the 230 and above range. Last night, I had mashed potatoes. And she sent me a picture of her glucose monitor, and it was at like 140, like 141, I want to say it was. And she couldn't believe that her fasting glucose dropped from 230 and above down to 140, eating the very foods that she was told not to eat.
Warning! This is our disclaimer. We are not medical experts. We are not giving you medical advice. Only your doctor can put you on or take you off of your medication. Check with your doctor before changing your nutritional program. We're providing education only.
What's going on, all you food fixers out there? This is Ron Venata.
And this is Vince Roundtree.
And we are here to talk about diabetes. Do you have diabetes? Do you know somebody with diabetes? Diabetes is the number one cause of limb loss, the number one cause of eye blindness. There's a lot of bad things that goes with diabetes, and there's so many misconceptions and misunderstandings, and there's actually little known secrets that you can learn right now today from myself and most especially Mr. Vince Roundtree, and you will learn some things that will absolutely drastically change your life. Vince, diabetes is close to your heart. I know you get very passionate, you get fired up. Y'all might just see him reach through the screen and shake you. Just be prepared. That might happen when you're watching this. If you're on audio, you may feel some tingles going down your arm and like tapping you on the shoulder, because what happens is Vince gets so passionate about this that he exists outside of his physical presence.
Look, now you're making the expectations way too high, man. I'll never meet him.
Okay, so Vince, I know you and me both with our clients, we have people all the time. Like because like people have this big idea that they have to avoid like fruits and potatoes and rice. And I mean, in the restaurant myself throughout the years, we used to do this hot bar, this meat and three type thing. People would come through and they would, and they'd say, oh yeah, give me the chicken tender, give me the meatloaf. Don't give me the bread. Don't give me the potatoes. Don't give me the white beans. Don't give me the rice. Just give me some green beans and give me some macaroni and cheese or something like that. So you tell me, or give me some fried okra, right? A lot of times they'd be like, give me fried okra instead of a lot of times they'd be like, they'd say, don't give me the things that's white. That's what they'd always say. Like, because they've been told so often, avoid things that are white because white are starchy things. White things will spike your insulin. And so there's a little bit to navigate there because there's a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of information that in some ways may be useful, but doesn't tell the whole story. And so what's the reason that you get so passionate about type 2 diabetes specifically?
Well, those are two different things, right? So what to eat and what not to eat is one thing. One of the things that drives me, that gets me so fired up about diabetes is another thing. And so we can talk about what to eat and why, people believe so much that carbs is the problem. And that is a logical response, but it doesn't get to the cause.
So let me ask you this. Would it be fair for me to say, is it a logical lie? Like it seems like, because there can be something that is related. It's almost like one of those association things. There can be something like carbs is kind of related to a spike in insulin.
It's direct. Like it makes sense. If you have type 2 diabetes and you eat an apple and your blood glucose spikes. And you'll know this even more if you're wearing a continuous glucose monitor. But that really measures your glucose kind of on a continuous basis. And so if you eat a apple or a banana or a potato, if you eat any of those foods and your glucose spikes up, why would you not think, well, gosh, I can't eat these foods because it causes my glucose to spike? That's logical. I can't blame you for thinking like that. That's logical.
Well, and at the same time, the doctors are constantly saying you have to avoid spiking your glucose, right? And so that means avoiding all the sugary foods.
That's the thing. That's the thing that is the most frustrating, is that when you have elevated glucose levels and you go to your doctor's going to do probably two things, depending upon how high it is. They're going to put you on medication and they're going to tell you to monitor your carbs, because their goal is to manage your A1C, manage your fasting glucose. Their goal is not remission. Their goal is not to get your glucose level under control without medication. That is not their goal. And that's what is infuriating about type 2 diabetes.
It's one thing to manage something. It's another to solve it or reverse it or put it in remission. There can be a very different, and before you go in, because I know once I let you go, you're going to go crazy. So let me mention this right quick, right? So like, y'all can go back to like episode 1 with Jim Matthews. And I think it's episode 1. And Jim was someone, he would eat a banana. So if people's like, well, these two guys don't have diabetes, you don't know what you just don't understand. Well, listen, we work with clients all the time that has diabetes, and they end up getting better with their diabetes, generally speaking. And the reason for that is because what we explain to them and teach them, a lot of which you're going to learn on this episode, or maybe future episodes, depending on how deep we can get into it in the few minutes that we have today. But like Jim Matthews, he would have a fasting glucose level of 358, and that was with 65 units of insulin. And that was on medications on top of that, right? And if he ate a banana, he said sometimes it would spike all the way up to 700. Like, think about that for a second, right? And now his fasting glucose with almost half, like less insulin. I think he's on 35 units of insulin now, and he keeps going down. His doctor tells him that maybe this time next year, he should be able to be completely off and medication free. But as of right now, as of dating of this episode, it's been about a year that he's been working with us. And now he's on like 35 units, and they got rid of another medication that he was on. And I think it was 2 that he got rid of. And at the same time, he eats a banana or an apple, and it might spike, he says, like 5 points or something, like 5-10 points. And it's like, and the reason for that is because, what you're going to learn about on this class is, or this episode, I guess I should say, is the philosophy behind type 2 diabetes and how to reverse it, right? Another person that comes to mind, we had a lady, Sherry, literally just recently joined our program, and she literally was freaking out about what we were telling her that she could have. And she was looking at it, she said, with anxiety, looking down at her plate, because she was like, I can't eat this rice. I can't eat this rice. I can't eat these potatoes. This is bad news. And literally she wakes up the next week, or a week or 2, I don't remember. I think it was 2 weeks. And she says that it dropped from, what was it, Vince? What was 230 something?
Yeah, she was over 230, 240 was her fasting glucose level. And she sent me a text on a Saturday morning, because she said, I'm sorry, I just had to share this with somebody because I can't believe what's going on. And I said, sure, what's going on? She was like, my fasting glucose was in the 230 and above range. Last night, I had mashed potatoes And she sent me a picture of her glucose monitor, and it was at like 140, like 141, I want to say it was. And she couldn't believe that her fasting glucose dropped from 230 and above down to 140, eating the very foods that she was told not to eat. And that brings us to my point, is that the way diabetes is treated today by the vast majority of doctors and our current healthcare system is their goal is to manage. Their goal is not to put it in remission. And remission means no medication, glucose levels under control. That is not their goal. Their goal is to manage. And the way that they have been trained to manage is medication and control your carbs. The problem with that approach is that what causes the diabetes in the first place? And
it's not the carbs. It's not the carbs.
Not the carbs, and it's not the fact that you weren't having medication. No. What causes your insulin to go up is something called insulin resistance. What is insulin resistance? That means your body is resisting the insulin that is being made. Why is your body resisting insulin? What is insulin's job?
Hold on just a second. Go back. Define insulin for me. Define insulin. Okay, I want to slow you down. Vince is super smart, guys. I'm going to slow him down. I'm going to force him to slow down and define what insulin's job is.
Insulin
Eat an apple for me, Vince. Eat an apple and explain what happens. Eat a banana and explain what happens.
When you eat an apple, the glucose from that apple gets into your bloodstream very quickly. That glucose converts to a carbohydrate, or the carbohydrate converts to glucose, right? So the carbohydrates from the apple convert to glucose, and that gets into your bloodstream. And glucose is actually the fuel that your body prefers. And so as the glucose gets into your bloodstream, the beta cells in your pancreas recognize, hey, there's glucose. This is our preferred source of energy. But for us to use this energy, it's got to get from the bloodstream into the muscle cell. Then the mitochondria can use that glucose as energy. As long as the glucose is floating around in the bloodstream, your body can't use it as its energy source. But insulin is the hormone that can open the door and allow glucose to get from the bloodstream into the muscle cell. So now your body can use it for insulin. So insulin is kind of like the key that opens the door and allows glucose to make its way from your bloodstream into the muscle cell. And so when somebody has diabetes and they measure their fasting glucose level, if your glucose level is high, the reason why it's high is because it can't get into the muscle cell. Imagine this, the muscle cell needs that glucose for energy. But as long as that glucose is floating around in your bloodstream, that means it's not in the muscle cell. So elevated glucose levels in the blood, it means that it's not in the muscle cell. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Would this be a great analogy? I'm asking you this. Okay. So glucose is the fuel that your body needs. So this is sugar, carbs. This is what your body needs, right? That's what you're saying. This is what we're telling people, right? So if that's the case, so let's pretend for a second in this analogy that sugar is gasoline, right? And your car needs to run on gasoline. Okay. Your vehicle, your body needs to run on glucose. Okay. So you pull up to the gas station, you get out of your car, you get ready to put the gas in your car. But the problem is you don't unscrew the lid before you put, like when you get ready to put your gasoline, a lot of times there's a lid there. There used to be on all cars, there used to be a lid and you had to unscrew it, right? Not so much anymore, but you used to have to unscrew the lid first. At least now today, you have to open the little door to put the gasoline hose into your gasoline tank. So what you're telling me is with someone with insulin resistance, the insulin is actually the part that's opening up the doorway so that gasoline can get in. But what's happening with people with diabetes is it's like they're pulling up to the gas tank and they're told, and they're starting to pour the gasoline in without putting it in the hole. So instead it's just spilling out everywhere. And so right now, what you're telling me is the medical establishment, the medical community that is being trained to just tell people, don't put any gas in your car. In a sense, just because it's spilling everywhere. So instead of opening the door and making sure you put the thing in there, instead, we're just going to say, don't give the body what it needs. Instead, just don't give it the fuel it needs. And then you won't have gasoline on the ground. You won't have all this extra glucose swimming around in your bloodstream that doesn't need to be there. Is that kind of a basic good analogy?
Yes. But yes. And what the person with type 2 diabetes really needs to know is why is that insulin not, or why is that glucose not able to get into the muscle cell? Why is it when their body makes insulin, the insulin's job, which is to bring glucose into the muscle cell, why is that not happening? And the reason why that's not happening is because there is saturated fat already inside of the muscle cell. You see, saturated fats impairs muscle signaling. Saturated fats do not need a hormone to get into the muscle cell. Glucose needs the hormone of insulin to get into the muscle cell. It's like glucose can't just get in there automatically, but fat can. So fat can get into the muscle cell easier than glucose can get into the muscle cell. And when that fat gets in the muscle cell, it prevents the insulin from opening up the door and saying, okay, glucose, you can come in now. The fat impairs that insulin signaling. And
so where does the fat come from?
And the saturated fat comes from all animal products. Beef, meat, chicken, dairy, cheese, eggs, sour cream, ice cream, anything that mayonnaise, anything that has any animal type product. Animal products have saturated fat. And I don't care if it's the free range chicken. I don't care if it's the grass fed beef. I don't care if it's the organic eggs. None of that matters. Every bit of it comes with saturated fat. And that saturated fat gets into the muscle cells very easily. And once it's in the muscle cells, that prevents glucose from then coming in. And so the glucose then keeps building up in the bloodstream and you've got elevated glucose levels.
One thing I'd like to point out is there is even a few plants that have saturated fat.
Yes. Coconut oil and palm oil are very high in saturated fat, but those are oils. Right? And so what we want you to eat are unrefined plant-based foods. And so an olive oil comes from an olive. I don't mind if you eat olives. Corn oil comes from corn. I don't mind if you eat corn. But if you take that corn, if you take that olive and you press out just the fat, throw away the carbohydrates, throw away the protein, throw away the vitamins, throw away the fiber, throw away the minerals, throw away the nutrients, throw away everything except 100% fat. And that 100% fat can then get into the bloodstream pretty quickly.
And
if
get
it's
into
in the
the muscle
bloodstream,
very quickly.
Get into the muscle cells.
Yeah.
Because it's 100% fat. The body doesn't have to do work. If you eat corn, if you eat olives, then your body's got to do work to pull the fat out. But if you are going to eat an oil, your body doesn't have to do any work. No, that's been refined and all of the fat has been pulled out of the olive, or all of the fat has been pulled out of the corn. Okay. Now that fat can get in the bloodstream pretty quickly. And when that gets in the bloodstream, it can get in the muscle cell. If it gets in the muscle cell, now it's really hard for glucose to get in.
So fat in general is the enemy, really, for a diabetic.
Fat is the enemy.
In all its forms,
and saturated fat is all fat is the enemy, but saturated fat is even the biggest arch enemy.
Okay. Gotcha. So saturated fat is the Joker, and if we're going to bring this to comic books, so is the Joker, and then regular fat is Harley Quinn or something.
I mean, you're more of a Marvel. I mean, I don't know my comic books.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a geek. So and I'm a geek enough to correct, it's not Marvel, it's DC Comics. So there you go, right?
That just shows I don't know what I'm talking about, right?
There you go.
I'll leave the comics to somebody who knows.
So I want to break down for a second. There's a guy, I think his name's Eric, that you get his story really blows your when you talk about it. There's something special happens. So just for y'all's benefit, I did not allow Vince to tell me the other day Eric's story. Why? Because I wanted to actually hear it fresh, directly from him, without rehearing it recently, right? So I have not heard this story in a while, and so I want to hear it new. And so we had talked about what we're going to talk about on this podcast, on this episode. And back also, I want to backtrack for just a second, and I want to make a special note that one of the future episodes I want to do, Vince, and you remind me about this, is I want to do a specific one about what's the problem with oil, right? Because so many people are misunderstanding. They think all oil is good, or that certain oils, olive oils, coconut oils, things like that, a lot, especially when they start moving into the plant-based lifestyle, they're like, well, it's not lard. So they see, because there's a big difference between, and maybe this will be a future episode, I know too, vegan versus whole food plant-based. There's it's not even close to the same thing. I mean, it is in a way, but it's not either at all. And so we're not proposing a vegan diet. We're not militant vegan people. Like, that's not what we are. But at least that's not what this podcast is about. But just make a special note about that. But to backtrack now, so we need to do an episode on the difference between vegans and whole food plant-based eaters, and we need to do a podcast specifically based on what's wrong with oils in the first place, why you should avoid oil, and why it's probably that needs to be a weight loss episode for sure, because that's the number one. I think. Would you say that that's the number one problem for people losing weight?
Yes, I would.
Oil. Yeah, I thought you would. Okay, cool. So let's go to Eric's story. So, and maybe as y'all hear him talk about this, you'll see some of this happen in your own life, and how that by avoiding your carbs, you automatically eat a lot of fat. And when you eat a lot of fat, you're literally guaranteeing that your diabetes is going to get worse over time. That's correct, isn't it?
Yep. Guaranteed.
I mean, that you're guaranteed that your diabetes is going to get worse over time. Right now, your glucose levels, if you don't eat any carbs over the last 2 weeks, you're going to be like, oh man, my glucose levels are great. As soon as you eat a potato, guess what's going to happen? As soon as you eat an apple, as soon as you eat a banana, as soon as you eat something like that, you're going, why? It's because the insulin resistance got worse over time. Why? Because there's a higher content of fat that went into your muscle cell, because that's the only thing you were eating. It's proteins and fats, right? And you wasn't getting carbs. So it guarantees that over time, the doctor will have to increase your insulin. It guarantees that over time, your body will not be able to handle glucose. It'll handle glucose less and less and less effectively over time, as far as I understand it, right? Now, we're not medical experts. We're not doctors. There's a disclaimer at the beginning of this video, but we're just telling you our experience, right? So explain to me, Vince, about Eric. Let's talk about Eric, and then we'll wrap up.
So Eric Adams was a police officer for 22 years, Brooklyn Borough president for 4 years. He recently won the Democratic nomination for mayor of New York City. And in 2016, when he was Brooklyn Borough president, prominent guy, right? New York City, one of the largest cities in the world, certainly the largest city in the US. Some of the best doctors that you can find. He's got access. I mean, you're talking about a man of privilege. He thought that he had an ulcer because he had a friend that had an ulcer. So he went in. Doctor says, yeah, you don't really have an ulcer, but your diabetes is really bad, really bad. He had already started losing some his feeling sensations in his fingers. Diabetic neuropathy was already setting in. He had lost eyes. He was getting blind in one of his eyes. His eye doctor had told him that he needs to turn in his driver's license. And so he asked his doctor, geez, what can I do? What can I do? Like, I don't want to, because diabetic neuropathy, it goes from the tingling to that very well could lead to limb amputation. And he was told that this could lead to limb amputation. He was told that his blindness or his eyesight is not going to get better. The doctor told him your eyesight is not going to get better. At best, we can try to slow down the decline, but it's not going to get better. So this guy is the Brooklyn Borough president. This is a man of connections and means. And so he went to another doctor, told him the same thing. Another doctor, same thing. No, he went to 5 different doctors. Every one of them said, we can't get you better. All we can do is help to slow down the process. Now imagine having the connections to the best medicine available. And 5 different doctors, all of them say, there's nothing we can do. And this is what people are dealing with every day. You go to your doctor, if you've got type 2 diabetes, you could be losing your eyesight. Diabetes is the #1 cause of blindness, #1 cause of limb amputation, #1 cause of kidney failure, and a severe elevated risk of heart disease and stroke. And so so it's serious. It's really, really serious. And your doctor's saying there's nothing we can do. What Eric Adams then did is say, wait a minute, 22 years as a police officer. Let me investigate this. I don't care that 5 doctors said no. He came home and Googled reversing diabetes. He didn't Google living with diabetes. He Googled reversing diabetes. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's name came up. He called him. Esselstyn said, sure, fly out to Cleveland. I'd be happy to see you. 2016, Eric Adams and his wife flew to Cleveland, and Dr. Esselstyn said, listen, you need a whole food, plant-based diet, no oil. You need to eat fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, split peas, chickpeas, whole grains with no oil. And Eric Adams said, man, I'm losing my eyesight. You telling me to stop eating chicken? I don't get it. And Dr. Esselstyn said, this is not up for debate. You have a choice to make. You go 100% eat unprocessed plant-based foods and give your body the chance to heal itself, or continue the path that you're on where you will lose your eyesight, you will probably have limb amputation, and the odds are you'll probably die of a heart attack. Eric Adams went back and he changed his diet. And this is what happened to him. In a matter of months, of weeks, his eyesight came back. The tingling in his fingers went away. His A1C went from like a 16, 17 to like a 6, a 5. His mother, who was 80 years old, had been a type 2 diabetic for 15 years, been on insulin for 7 years. 3 months plant-based, off all of her medication. The thing that just upsets me so much about this disease is that it's so dangerous. And the vast majority of doctors don't treat it in a way that it can go into remission. Because as long as you're just minimizing your carbs and taking medication, it's impossible to go into remission because you haven't done anything to treat the cause. The cause is there's fat inside your muscle cells. And when you cut back on your carbs, what are you probably going to eat? Meat. It's the very thing. It's the exact same thing as if as a patient walks into a hospital that's got lung cancer and he's a smoker. The doctor can say, I can treat this lung cancer as best I can, but if you don't stop smoking, it's impossible to knock this thing out. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. Because as long as a type 2 diabetic continues to eat saturated fat and fats in general, it's impossible for the body to fight off diabetes. It's impossible. Now, some people will choose not to do it. I get that. There are some people with lung cancer that say, I don't care if I die of lung cancer. I love my cigarettes that much. That's your right. There will be people that say, I don't care if I die of diabetes or heart disease. I love my chicken wings that much. I love my pepperoni cheese pizza so much. I don't care if it kills me.
I don't care if I have to chop off my leg. I'll still eat my chicken, you know.
If I got to lose my leg, if I got to lose my eyesight, I don't care. If I have kidney failure, I don't care. My pepperoni cheese pizza, my bacon and eggs mean that much to me. If that's how you feel, great. That is your right. I am not the one to say don't do it. What I am the one to say is if you care more about your health, there's a better way. There's a better way. And that's what drives me. What drives me is that I know the vast majority of doctors, and it's because of their training. They don't get trained in lifestyle medicine. There are some doctors who embrace lifestyle medicine, and those are the doctors that we have learned from. But the majority of doctors, they don't get trained in lifestyle medicine. So all they know is medication. And if you don't treat the cause, you'll have this for the rest of your life.
You know, that's just so good. Man, that's just so good. I want to dig into this much deeper. We'll get into it in future episodes. Our time is out right now, but you know, that is the reason why, you know, people stop me all the time and they're, you know, and they'll say, and I can see in their eyes, they're like, I still like my meat. I still like this stuff. And, you know, so, and why are you crazy enough to, you know, close down your restaurants and do all this kind of stuff and talk about all this nutrition stuff? Like you had a good thing going. Like, yeah, you're right. I did. But like literally, like there was people, like when I walk through Walmart, I can see people, if they got shorts on, especially in the summertime, you can see the diabetic neuropathy from their ankles down. You can see it. It's all red, right? And all I want to do is go up to them and be like, listen, like, you need to know something. You need to know something. You've been told that you've got this forever. And while it's possible that might be the case, we see people all the time that's had it for years that no longer has it anymore. I mean, because you move from treating the symptoms to treating the cause, right? Right. Like that's what drives me and Vince to come here and do this podcast right now, is to wake you up. It's to say, listen, let me shake you right now. Look, I'm going to shake your camera. Ah! There is a better way. The question is, do you want the result enough to even look at the solution? And usually people look at it, well, I love my this because it's just me. It's not just you. It's your whole family. It's everybody. You're influencing people. You're influencing your grandkids. You're influencing your family. You're influencing everybody around you. Whether you realize it or not, it's not just your decision. This is the reason why I had to change everything for myself, for my business. It's because I knew that with my new son, with Strickland, right, that he would be watching me, and everything that I did, he would learn. That's how, if I just didn't pay attention to it, if I just kept doing what I was doing, if I just kept in the restaurant, then guess what that meant? That meant that it was okay to sell things to people that wasn't in harmony with what I knew to be true. I wasn't willing to lead by that example any longer. I could not be right with God in that way. I'm not saying you can't be right with God by eating meat or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. We have another meeting to get to, so we got to go. But I can't wait to explore more with you on future episodes. Subscribe to us, follow us, like us, however medium you're seeing this. Follow us. I don't know, whatever. However you're listening to this, watching this, whatever it is, we got a lot of stuff for you. And, we have a free masterclass on most Thursdays. It may be different in the future. We don't know. You can check out that link. It might be right here. You might be seeing it right now in the post editing right now. I don't know. All right. Y'all have a fantastic day. We get into a lot more details of this and how to go about it and how to implement it in your daily lives. But listen, we're here to bring you hope. We're here to bring you excitement. We're here to encourage you. We're here to bring you information. Okay. This is the Food Fix Experience, baby. I never said that before, but there you go.